Hello, everyone. Update on recent adventures. Golden Week happened last week, and I went on a 6-day trip. It was really good, and I made this presentation to show to my Preply teacher. But I just started lessons with her, and it was only the second class, and it just didn't feel right presenting to her. We ended up just talking about it instead. But I have this presentation, and I thought, well, I might as well do something with it. Show my pictures to someone. So this is Golden Week 2026. I went to Matsumoto, Takayama, and Toyama. So from Tokyo, I took the Azusa Express to Matsumoto. That's actually a train that has a lot of reserved seats, and because it was Golden Week, and I didn't book in advance, I couldn't get a seat, and so I had to stand most of the 3-hour trip there. I left right after classes on Friday and got on a 6 o'clock train and got in around 9 or just before 9. I think only the last 20-30 minutes I was able to sit for a bit. The cool thing about the train is above all the seats there's a light, and the light indicates whether the seat is reserved or going to be reserved in the near future, or is unreserved for the remainder of the trip. And I totally misunderstood it. Oh, at first I totally didn't really realize that's what the lights were for. So I was sitting in someone else's seat, and then I got booted out, and then booted out, and then the third time I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stand near the door. And then I saw the signs that said green lights mean that it's reserved, yellow lights mean it's going to be reserved, and it's the red light that means that it's going to that it's free and open to sit in. And so I was just like, just another thing in Japan that's backwards from the West. But it's fine. Got to Matsumoto, had 2 full days there, and then took a bus to Takayama. And on that, I only spent the day there. I subsequently the same day went to Toyama, where I had 2 nights, and a day and a half. And while in Toyama, I ended up doing a day trip to this is Amaharashi and Johanna. And interestingly, and then after that, I came back by Shinkansen, and it's like a 2.5-3 hour trip back to Tokyo. An interesting thing that happened was I don't plan that much, and so I was in Takayama, and I'd gone to the place I wanted to go to, which I'll show in a bit. And I was like, I just better check the train schedule again to see when the last train I can take to Toyama is. I was on the city bus. And so I checked Google, and it said significant delays. And it turns out that the train between Takayama and Toyama, one section got closed like a couple days earlier because of bridge repairs. And it must have been like substantial, serious bridge repairs to close it right before Golden Week like that. And so I went into the station, saw the sign that it was closed, went to the bus terminal and was like, hey, I'm trying to go to Toyama today. And it's like Golden Week, so everything's full and busy. And the woman was like, I don't think that's happening. And she checked, and she's like, no, the bus isn't. It's all full. And but she sent me to a town nearby Toyama. She's like, we have one bus. It's like the last bus of the day. One bus that goes to this town near Toyama, and then you can take the train to Toyama. And I was like, well, how far away from Toyama is it? And she's like, it's like 40 minutes on the train. And I was like, okay, I'll do that, because otherwise I have nowhere to stay in Toyama. Nowhere to stay in Takayama, and I'm kind of screwed. I'd have to do like some huge expensive loop around to Kanazawa or something like that. Because I had actually looked at staying a night in Takayama, but by the time I looked at it, everything was booked, and the remaining hotels were like a 400 a night or something crazy like that. So it worked out, but it was a momentary scare. Anyways, Matsumoto. Matsumoto is famous for this black castle, and of all the castles in Japan, it is definitely in the top 5 of the most beautiful castles, alongside with Himeji's White Castle, Osaka Castle, and I'm a partial to a few lesser known castles. But this trip kind of evolved around me booking it before I came to Japan. So like a month and a half ago, I booked the hotels because I wanted to make sure that I went traveling on Golden Week somewhere. And I was originally hoping that I would cancel these plans because I would make friends, or my Japanese friends in Japan, I'd be able to hang out with a certain person, and that didn't work out. So this was like a backup plan that ended up being actioned on. So in Matsumoto, I went to the castle, the city museum, the city art museum, the Chihiro art museum, and then the Yukio museum. This is my second time to Matsumoto, and I've actually been in this castle before, but I thought it would be nice to go back to it because it is like quite a nice castle. It's one of those castles though that's like really nice from the outside, like it's just very photogenic. So I went to the castle. It was, because it was Golden Week, there was about a 45-minute wait to get inside, and then it was just like packed inside, so it was very slow going, but it was still fun. It was still nice, and I still had a good time. This is kind of like the most popular viewpoint of the castle because you have this nice bridge in the foreground. So I got a picture of that, and then went around, ate, and went to the museums. There's a shrine and kind of a bit of a tourist shopping street. And then the Matsumoto City Museum is a fairly new building. I had it on my list of architecture to go see. And so I was telling a friend that I go to museums not necessarily for the content of what's inside, but to see the architecture. Like I used to, before I went to school for architecture, I wasn't really interested in museums. Now I'm really interested in them, but mostly for the architecture. And sometimes you go to a museum and it has good architecture and a good content. Sometimes it's bad content. Sometimes the architecture is bad. So it varies. Being a pretty new building, it was quite nice inside. I've started to notice that museums generally have a very large open atrium at the front of the building, which is very nice and airy and spacious and all that. And then the gallery rooms are kind of just boxes because they have to accommodate different displays. So really, they're just an empty box that you fill with content or like change up every time you change a display. That's kind of different from museums in Canada and America. Canada and America the museums don't really necessarily have, and to an extent the ones I've been in Europe, they don't really necessarily have these big open atriums at the front of the museum. That just gives you a sense of space and like openness. So I think that's kind of a Japanese take on museums. This museum was actually quite good in that the special display was about travel. So it had stuff about like how people used to travel during the Meiji era. It had 55 ukiyo prints of the trip to Mount Fuji, which I really want to collect myself and I really like. So I was really excited to see them all in succession, which was really cool. And then the permanent display was kind of about the region, and it was well curated too. in the bottom right corner, you can see this was kind of about the natural landscape of the region. It's Matsumoto is kind of the main city before you do the Kurobe Tateyama Alpine route. So there's a lot of hiking and tall mountains in the region, or kind of close by, and so that's kind of it used to be a big logging area, and now it's a big outdoor recreation area that I'd like to go back to quite a bit. Um, but yeah, they had like a they do Japanese put more effort and thought into the curated museum displays. They put more effort and thought into everything. It seems everything from the poster, like the advertisement poster, to these museum displays. So they're a lot more interesting to me of displays than what you get in Canada. In the West, it seems like the whatever's shown in a museum is kind of like very sterile, so that you're really only looking at the artwork or the piece itself. Whereas in Japan, it's kind of integrated. So here there's I think I can zoom in a bit. Oh yeah. So here there's like an outline on the floor of Matsumoto, and then these display boards are shaped like mountains. And then behind you have pictures of mountains. That graphic in the background, that's the door that they bring in. Like that goes to the back of the house. That's the door they use to bring in the stuff to the room. And they put a mural on it. Excuse me. And then in front of that, they have like just the old things. After that, I went to. Let's see. After that, I went to the City Art Museum, which was meh. Not really into that kind of art. And the building was like, eh. But there was a special display on woodworking, and someone has made this graphic entirely out of wood pieces. And I was like, holy moly, that is beautiful. And like, wow, how did you do that? And some of the grass and the leaves are just so thin that I'm not sure like how they, like the skill it took to like make these little cuts and all that. Incredible. On the next day, my second day in Matsumoto, I went to this Azumi no Chihiru art museum. It's like out in the countryside, so it required taking a train an hour into the countryside, like past these rice fields, which was like scenic enough, and then like walking half an hour through the countryside and rice fields to get to this museum. There was a bit of like a craft fair beside the museum, which was cool. The museum is done by an architect that I quite like, Hiroshi Naito. But the museum I was kind of disappointed in. I think I found out actually yesterday, a couple days later. I think this is one of his earlier works, and I think that's why it wasn't as impressive as I thought it would be. The content was also about like children's picture books, which I couldn't care about. But I was looking at one of his books yesterday, and what I found interesting was the plan and the models in the book that I saw made this museum look like it'd be really interesting and really nice. But when I was there, I was less impressed with it. And it's something I still have to think about why that is the case. Part of it, I think, is that there wasn't really a lot of flow to the museum, which is weird because like it's set up with an open courtyard and there is a front and a back entrance and a cafe, but it just didn't. The exhibition rooms and the museum itself didn't flow very well. there were it was very hard to photograph because it felt very narrow, even though it was like there was this airiness to the roof. It felt very narrow. Um, yeah, it was a very strange museum. And then the last museum I went to is the Ukiyo Museum. So this is woodblock art that I really like. The museum itself is a pretty typical early 2000s concrete building. The art inside was wonderful. I like ukiyo art, but I specifically like the travel themed ones. There's a lot of there's themes of birds and flowers and women of the Meiji era that I don't care about, but these travel pictures I really like. And I think if I start getting into like going to antique shops, and actually I was at a antique craft market the other day, and I saw some woodblock prints, and I was like, yeah, I could definitely get into collecting those. Especially from the antique markets where they're like $10 or something for a print. So my next stop was Takayama, and it was really just the day that I was there. So I got an early bus, 7:40 bus that got me there at 11 o'clock. And then the bus out was 4:20. So just over around 5 hours. My main goal was to go to Hida no Sato. But I ended up having enough time to go to these other two, Yoshijima Traditional House and nearby a shrine. Hida no Sato is an open-air museum of old farmhouses called Minka of the region. Takayama is close to Shirakawago, which is a famous UNESCO World Heritage Site of thatched roofed buildings. It's a very beautiful village, very beautiful place to go. I do want to go back, but it is a bit touristy. Its fame has made it a bit like a theme park in a way. Like there's a lot of restaurants and like gift shops there, whereas this Hida no Sato is an open air museum. So these buildings weren't all originally there. Very few of them were originally on this site. A lot of them were brought here and rebuilt as museum pieces. And as a museum, you go inside these buildings and they have like displays about life back in the day, like silkworm production or farming, or who used to live there, what used to be done in the house. So it's more educational, which I liked. And the architect in me really geeked out about this. I took so many photos of shoji screens. I love the light of shoji screens. And that day was good because it was cloudy. It was partially cloudy, so the clouds came and went, the rain came and went. But it was very good for lighting. And so I took so many photos of shoji screens, which I really loved. And yeah, you can see here. Also, I took photos of the tableware and the irori, which is the open fire pit where all the cooking was done. A wonderful place, very excited. I spent, I think, 2 hours there, went into 30 odd buildings. Really enjoyed my time there. Also learned a bit, got some thoughts for architecture in general, and kind of how we think of certain things in architecture. One thing that came up was, so traditionally Japanese had these irori, which are like central fire pits where you would have water cooking or water boiling, cook your food. And I'd gone to a traditional area with a Japanese friend before, and she pointed out that like this house always had a fire burning and she didn't know why. And at the time, I was like, oh, yeah, every time I go to an old traditional house, there's a fire burning, but I never really know why. I finally found out at Hida Sato that it's part of the house maintenance. So they will light a fire in the morning, and it might go out by 11. But what it does is the heat from the fire warms the air in the building and gets rid of the moisture. So it dries out the building, and it keeps the interior of the building dry, which avoids mold and rot. The smoke from the fire will go up into the rafters, and the heat actually will go up into the rafters and dry the underside of the ceiling from condensation and moisture, which is a problem houses in modern houses have, because we don't do that in modern houses. We don't have a specific way of drying out the underside of roofs in modern houses, and that's where you get a lot of mold issues and rot issues. So the fire heats up and dries out the underside of the roofs and kind of permeates into the roof too, the heat to dry it out. But the smoke itself also kind of goes up into the roof and the underside of the roof and the thatching, and kind of goes throughout the house as well. And that gets rid of the bugs. The bugs don't like smoke. So it gets rid of the bugs and it gets rid of the termites. And so it's actually like a very important thing to burn a fire like every day, even if it's just a museum piece, just to keep the house in good condition. This picture happens to be from a traditional house in the town that I went to. And then on the left is the shopping street that was very crowded because it was Golden Week. It was kind of like a mini Kyoto. A lot of old traditional houses and lots of shops, lots of good-looking snack food and gift shops. I didn't get any food because the lineups were really long. And then on the right side, the shrine. Didn't have a whole lot of time. It was also pretty tuckered out from the day at the museum, looking at all the old buildings. But it was good. And then the third stop was Toyama. After all the museums I went to in Matsumoto, and having gone to the open air museum in Takayama, I was kind of tuckered out and tired. Originally, I was going to go up the Izu Peninsula, or the Nato Peninsula, to go to this town. I realized that I hadn't really done proper trip planning, and it would take way too long because it'd need a bus and it'd be really expensive. Because most people that go there actually go from Kanazawa, which has a train line there. So I was looking on Google Maps and I was like, I want to just go somewhere to relax, somewhere on the coast to relax and be in nature for a bit. And I found the Amaharashi coast. I was like, oh, that looks like an interesting spot. Zoomed in, found out, checked the photos, and I was like, oh, that's actually a very famous scenic place, a very famous scene. So I'll go there. While I was on the train the next day to go there, the train got packed. Like it was like a old diesel train from I don't know how long ago, 2 cars only, and it should have been like a countryside train that was empty, and it was just packed to people. And I was like, why is it so packed? Is there like an event going on? So I was standing there Googling events, and the Johanna Hikiyama festival came up, but that festival is actually like an hour in the opposite direction. So it turns out that everyone was going to Amaharashi just to see the view, like me. But I decided I would go to the Johanna Hikiyama festival afterwards. So this is along the coast, Amaharashi. It's famous because it's got this island that's kind of scenic just off the coast, and then it's got the Japanese Alps in the background. There's a cafe that has a very good train spotting position, so you get this very famous view in modern Japanese, where you have the train coming along the coast. and it's not like a modern train. It's an old train. You have the island, and then you have the mountains in the background. Um, Most of the photos I've seen of this place, I think, are usually taken in winter when there's a bit more snow on the mountains, and there's definitely fewer people. But because it was Golden Week, like it was just so busy. But it was a lot of fun. It was so cool. I really liked it. Really enjoyed it. Um, and then I went to the festival. It took an hour to get there. Well, more than an hour in the other direction. 2 hours, hour and a half, 2 hours to get there. Um, Apparently, it's a 300-year-old tradition of pulling these carts through the town. And there's tall carts like this with deities on them, and then smaller carts like this that have these really intricate wood carvings on them that are so gorgeous. Um, I think my understanding is it's a regional specialty where they will curve a wood plank from both sides to make this 3D view, and I've never seen such intricate wood carving before. It is incredibly detailed, incredibly fragile too, like how easy it'd be to like snap off a piece, but they're so beautiful. And so they will drag these through the town. Inside the smaller carts with these graphics, there'll be people that like play instruments and sing a bit, and they'll stop in front of a house and put on a little musical performance. And yeah, just drag them around town. It was really cool to see. It's really odd though, because these cuts are so big. They could have been designed with steering in mind, but instead, when they need to turn, they will like put weight on the front and then just drag the wheels to the side, and it makes a big racket, which is part of the festival, and it like scratches up the pavement too. But it was really cool to see, just to stumble on this like traditional festival. They drag them through the town, and like it's down these narrow alleyways where they even have to like fold up the sides to make sure they can get through. And it's a lot of fun, and there's lots of people out just to watch and see it. Had some good street food too. Was something completely unexpected, but that I really enjoyed. While I was on the train back, this grandmother and this woman sat beside me and started chatting me up, and so I got to practice some Japanese with them. And they also recommended me a restaurant to go to, so I ended up going to a local restaurant based on their recommendation, where I had kamameshi for the first time, which is kamameshi means a rice dish, and so it's rice in this like iron pot with vegetables and protein on top, and then as a teishoku, as a set meal, it comes with miso soup, some pickled vegetables, and then oden, which is kind of like a soup. And it was really cool that like I finally talked to some locals and then got given a recommendation, and they actually walked me to the store. They were like, here, come here, and then walked me inside and was like, okay, I think you should get like, helped me order, like, I recommend this. So it was really nice to finally get that kind of travel experience that I've heard so many people have, but I've never had myself. So to finally get that experience was really special. On my last day, I had to check out of my capsule hotel, and the same woman had recommended I go to this park where there's this bridge. It's called the kind of like the Heavens Bridge, but each tower is just like a lookout tower, and it's free. So I went and looked at that. Went to the design museum, which was a bit of a letdown. It was interesting that on the roof they had this children's play area, but architecturally it was not. I didn't think it was a great project. This giant glass window faces south, and so like the atrium gets so hot and you can really feel it standing in the shade inside versus in the sun inside. Um, so I didn't think it was a particularly well designed museum. And then the exhibit was about children's stuff again, so I didn't really care for that. Went to Toyama Castle just because it was there, and then also the woman had recommended the city hall has a lookout that's free, and it's quite high up too. So I went there and um, took a look at that, and that was quite cool. Like it was like, yeah, this is a nice, cool, free attraction. Um, and so here's some of the other food I ate, mostly in Matsumoto. Sansoku yaki is like fried chicken. It's like karage, but it's apparently a regional specialty. So is Nishin soba, which was really good soba. It had this fish in it. It was so delicious. And then some more tonkatsu and yakisoba that I had. Yeah, and that was my trip. That was I ended up coming back on the last day. I came back in the mid to early afternoon, like right after lunch, because I was worried about. It was a Wednesday, and I was going to have a kanji test on Friday, and I was a bit anxious about studying for it. So I came back a bit early, studied for it in Ikebukuro for in the evening, and then Friday also studied a bit for it. Test ended up going fine. I think I aced it. Um, it happened that on Thursday, a classmate who had been in the school for 6 months already told me that the test was basically a copy of the quizzes we'd been having. So just to study the quizzes. I was like, no way it's that easy. And then I talked to another friend, and he was like, oh, yeah, that's what it is. And I was like, what? So I studied the quizzes again, and lo and behold, they took, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 quizzes, condensed it into 6, 7, 8 pages of quizzes, condensed it into like 5 pages. And that was the quiz. So, like, we had, I don't know, 45 minutes to do it, and I was done in like 10 minutes. Went through it again and like tried to write cleanly and nicely, and then ended up just writing on the back a bit of an essay of my trip, but I ran out of time. But I mean, yeah, the quiz ended up being fine, or the test ended up being fine. Have a midterm, 2 days of midterms coming up this week. Today is Sunday, and today's Monday. Today's class is review, and then tomorrow is written midterm, and I think Wednesday is oral midterm. Not too concerned about the oral part. I know I speak well, but I mean, my grammar's not the best. But I think the bar is quite low. And I've been told that if we study the review package, the test is pretty similar to the review package. So it should be fine, but I guess I'm just used to the engineering exams where the average pass the class average is around 50%, and they're trying to trick you at every turn. But yeah, I wanted to show my presentation to someone and talk about my trip. So hope you enjoyed it, and I'm already planning the next trip, which is at the end of June, between terms. So there'll be a few adventures before then, but that's the next big trip. Okay, thanks. Bye for now.